Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing this afternoon? Everyone okay? Getting tired? Probably getting good and tired. Good news is I got a demo and it might break and it might make things very exciting today. So just quick show of hands. I can't really see too well, but how many folks have used the Autopilot project before? Ooh, that's not very many. So yeah, I can kind of tell. It's not a very active project when it comes to contributors. We'll talk about that at the end. Today I'm going to throw a few use cases at you, though. Use cases I had for myself where I actually jumped back into it. So I'll get started here with this first slide. This is me. I'm Dustin Van Buskirk. Actually been at Codefresh for over 7.5 years. So when the Argo Autopilot project started, I was part of that project in the kind of initial phase of that and kind of moved away from it. Currently working at Octopus, if you can't tell by the logo. So one of my projects recently had me jump back into Autopilot. I was looking for a way to install Argo, wanted to manage it through GitOps, which is something that we've done as a common practice from day one at Codefresh, is to do everything the GitOps way. And that means all the configuration exists in the version control, and so we're doing everything correctly for the GitOps policies. So basically, I'm going to give a quick lightning talk, hoping I will come up with most of the time. We'll see how the demo goes. So basically, Argo Autopilot, the project, has a few common use cases. So, I've basically applied every single one of these use cases to my talk today. Number one is basically to help me facilitate the Argo CD installation and put it under GitOps. That means that this Argo Autopilot project is going to, in the version control, help me update the required paths, put the required configurations, and put them under version control so that Argo CD is managing itself through GitOps operations. So, as I mentioned, the project started about 4 years ago. At the time, Codefresh was trying to find a good way to install Argo CD with our users. A lot of folks were brand new to Argo CD. The Helm charts weren't quite there yet. And you'll see some of that resonate a little bit in the Argo Autopilot project in the way that we use customize, in the way that's programmed for customize today. Doesn't mean you can't use Helm with it. But it's not a first-class citizen by any means. It requires you to enable Helm in order to deploy things via customize over Helm. Has some advantages, but yeah, there's some shortfalls as well. The second item was to basically use that same GitOps structure that I've put in place for the Argo installation itself with my applications. So ideally, we want all the configuration in the version control in a similar structure, so that when we're looking at different environments, we don't see that the configurations organize differently between the environments. This gives us a solid construct going forward when we're trying to do things like promote between environments. So, I'm not going to cover too much about the promotion between environments, but I definitely wanted to be able to do that because I was sitting my own work over the top of that, and it required that structure be in place. The third thing is that it's kind of a nice to have here for me, and I was able to get everything working, is that since everything is backed up in my configuration as code, I'm able to actually use Argo Autopilot to be able to bring back up, basically do recovery of my entire Argo cluster components, plus my own Argo CD applications behind the scene. So kind of jumping into Autopilot and how it works, right? So Autopilot is a Argo project that is a binary that sits between you, your Kubernetes API, and your version control system. So it helps tie all those things together from your local machine. So basically, when you're on your local machine, you can bootstrap a cluster, install Argo CD, configure it from there. You can also add additional applications. It'll help you put the structure in place for your GitHub, or I think it works with GitLab, Bitbucket, a few other different version control systems, Git. But basically, working with that version control system, it's also going to put the structure of the applications in place for you using app install. And then finally, you can recover everything by specifying that bootstrap command to install Argo. And then from that point, you can point it to the configuration repository, the directory, and reinstall everything back into a new cluster. So that's what I'll demonstrate today, actually, is using that bootstrap function, pointing it to the version control system, and telling it now to put everything onto a new cluster for me. So it works really great as a recovery process as well. So my use case is basically, I was given a new project recently where I had to install Argo CD to multiple different clusters. Normally not part of my role because actually at my company we have some automation around that already. But we're looking at the Argo open source now from a different perspective there. So I had to find a new way to install this. So I went ahead and picked up Autopilot, and I went ahead and started deploying. Now, this was kind of unique to my deployment, is that I wanted to not use hub and spoke. So in a lot of cases, a lot of folks are using hub and spoke. There's nothing wrong with hub and spoke, but I like to use a Argo CD per cluster that manages that cluster. So it makes it a lot easier for me. There's some benefits to it, and I'll go over those benefits of running an Argo CD per cluster. But what I realized right away is that I'm going to get into a maintenance nightmare here unless I have a way to predictably install Argo CD to these clusters and manage it. So that's why I went ahead with the Argo Autopilot project. Also, on top of that, I needed to put the applications in place so that I can manage those applications through my project. And basically, those had to be deployed with that construct in place because I was mapping the configuration files that had to be in a specific directory structure from environment to environment. So they all had to match. They all had to be deployed predictably. Lastly, as a developer, sometimes my clusters just magically vanish. I blow them away on my own by mistake all the time. Luckily, I'm a salesperson, so it's okay. I can do that, and I can recover from there. So here's kind of the deployment model. I'm not sure, a lot of folks I know do our hub and spoke. There's a lot of great advantages to that, and we have a great blog post that covers all the advantages and disadvantages to each kind of Argo deployment model. I went with the standalone model for my exercise, and basically what I wanted to do is just have the Argo CD service that cluster it belongs on. That way I have better isolation. I can also have more reliability by having my Argo CD in that cluster. I'm not dependent on kind of a single point of failure to deploy all my Argo apps across different environments. And then, of course, isolation of concerns, better security. So, I can get into this Argo CD if it's for dev, if it's for staging, if it's for production. You can put special RBAC in place, give permissions to specific teams. You don't have to worry about that kind of multi-tenancy that comes with that hub and spoke model. So you can basically separate these different environments. Also, you don't have to have networking between the environments anymore. You don't have to worry about, can this Argo CD attach to this cluster's API? It will be able to attach because it's going to attach internally to the in-cluster API. Of course, this comes with its complexity, right? So there's certain cons here where I thought Argo Autopilot would be a great fit to help me solve for these. Some of those is going to be just management and updates. Like, how do I reliably update my Argo CD installation? How do I manage it? And how do I recover it, right? So those type of things are kind of what I'm going to cover, at least as far as my use cases and how Argo CD fit for me. And really, that's how I'm trying to simplify Argo CD myself, is by using Autopilot to do these things. So number one, basically managing the Argo CD management. I wanted an easy way to install and configure everything, and I wanted it all under version control. I was going to put it all into a single repository using a mono repo so that I have all my configuration files in one place so I can see and manage them from one place. Of course, that's not a requirement. With Argo Autopilot, you can point, different clusters to different repos, have them managed separately. That's up to you. But basically, what this did is it helped me simplify edge deployments to these clusters. I knew I need to have multiple installations. I wanted it all backed up. How could I do this? Well, I just went ahead and Argo CD Autopilot bootstrapped every single one of my clusters, configured them, put them in the version control system repository, all the configuration that went with that. And eventually, I got onto the point of my applications. So here's kind of what that repository layout looks like. So there's development, staging, and production. There's different ways to organize this. Again, we could do different Git repositories, but we can also inject our own folder structure, whatever requirements are here. Then we could use an owner's file to basically set up permissions around those different folders. So right here, we can see the applications that are currently under management from this cluster. The bootstrap is going to contain all the Argo CD configuration files I require. The customization.yaml is going to sit over the top of the Argo CD installer. That's going to allow me to put in information, overlay information, or overrides to specify and make that Argo CD installation, have the required config plugins and other things that I require. And of course, this is all connecting to internal clusters, so I don't have a bunch of cluster resources I have to manage. Instead, I just have the in-cluster resource that I'm working with. And now I have my application deployments I have to worry about. So basically, I've already covered this. Using the GitOps principles, having the correct repository structure, that's going to help me get these applications deployed in a predictable manner that I can then go ahead and update. Now, the update, being automation, we want it to be predictable. So in a lot of cases, you can go from values file to values file, set up your path mapping to where you have like environment name as part of that path, and then eventually get to your values YAML for your application. And that way, you just can deploy from system to system just by changing the pathing. So that gives us a really easy way to promote the configuration changes, the values file changes, which, by the way, Helm works with this, or the customize overlay. Any of that can kind of be brought into this. Then as far as, well, I guess this is all covered. Creates a simple pattern. Okay, so those are just all kind of the different ways it's impacting it, but you've heard them all before, so I'll skip on to what that looks like from the version control system. So here you can see the demo application here that I deployed. I have a base, my customization.yaml, that's pointing to my other customization files that brings in basically a customization pointer. And then I have an overlay. And in this specific case, I only have one. So if this was a multi kind of cluster approach, you might see one for development, one for staging, one for production. But here I just have this Argo manages this one overlay, which is involved with the development project. So project's another thing you can easily create as well. The project construct is supported from the Argo CD Autopilot, so you can create that, sort your applications under that project like I've done here. So just basically having this consistent is what's really important as we begin promotion around these processes. Okay. And then another thing, just like I said, I can blow away my clusters at any given time just because, well, I get a knock on the door from the folks from IT saying, oh, your cost is up really high, what can you do? Well, I can just go ahead and let those clusters go. I don't have to worry about those repercussions. Now I have a way to easily install Argo CD and all those applications that are under that Argo CD installation from the version control system. So I can keep all that configuration in the version control system. So any reason I lose a cluster, like I said, it could be me fat fingering something. It could be, me going through the process of just, cleaning up resources and accidentally cleaning up the wrong resource. But with this command here, I can just point from my local machine, set the context correctly to the Kubernetes context I want to recover to, and then I'm going to be able to specify the repository and be able to pass that information in so that I can go ahead and just hit the button, recover everything from the configuration that I stored in the version control system. So here's where things get dicey. Demo time. So I'm going to go ahead and try to shift screens, bring up my terminal. So hopefully you can see that. All right, terminal. Everyone can read that? Okay, I'm just going to assume yes. Oh, so, okay, so just let me make sure I'm connected to Wi-Fi here. I'll start with making sure my Kubernetes cluster is online here. Give me a second. It's down there, so I got to kind of focus on it and try to get to see it here. Sorry, I don't need a watch on there. Just trying to make sure this is the correct cluster. It should be absent of anything related to Argo CD currently. All right. Yeah, so it's just got the Cube System metric server on there. So what I'm going to attempt to do is I'm going to attempt to Argo CD Autopilot bootstrap this. Let's see if I can actually see it. Okay. Wait a second here. Go back over here. I'm stealing my command from my slide deck because for some reason I don't have it anymore, which makes me worry that that means my token's not set up on this particular window here. Well, we're going to hope it is. Because for some reason my terminal doesn't have any history for me to recover to. Maybe I just typed it wrong. And I did. I didn't put a dash in there. So basically we have my repo, okay, everything, cool. Let's go ahead and clear that out. And so this is the binary here, and we have the autopilot recover. All right, this is what we want to do. So basically what we'll see is I'll go ahead and run this here, and it's going to begin the recovery process from the version control system if it has an internet connection, and we'll hope it does. I believe it does from the Kubernetes. Okay, so the whole purpose of this binary is that from my local machine, I want to be able to put together the version control system with the Kubernetes cluster I'm talking to, so that Kubernetes context. So it's going to realize it has to create everything. Nothing's currently available. It's then going to restore Argo CD, and I have some applications it's going to restore as well. So what we should be able to do, let me see if I can drag that up a little bit, so you can see the very bottom here. We should be able to watch everything get recreated, and then hopefully I went ahead and deployed the sock app for the sock store, and hopefully that all recovers okay. And basically, this is what I'm going to use going forward as a path just to install my entire demo site to my Argo CD clusters, which I'm going to have a dev, staging, and production eventually. So I timed this out. It's about 5 minutes in total to recover everything, but I promised I'll show the Argo CD user interface in just a second, and then everyone can clap, and we'll all get excited about it. So this does eventually quit out when Argo CD comes into a ready state, and then Argo CD starts picking up the work. So basically, Argo CD is redirected to the configuration files. It grabs all the applications that were currently underneath there, begins the deployment of all those applications, which includes a bunch of demo apps that I have. Sock Store, I believe I have a guest book in there, and I might have one other demo app in there that's part of that. So yeah, as soon as this is done, I will open up and watch the pods for just a moment, make sure they're online. Once they're online, it's actually going to spit out too, I believe, a command for me at the end where I can do a port forward proxy into the Argo CD user interface. And then if you already noticed I have a browser open behind this, we'll navigate to that interface and watch everything else come online. All right. So there's Autopilot. It's done what it needs to do. It's recovered everything. So we'll go ahead and take this and the temporary user name password here. Okay. Might go ahead and refresh this window here. And of course, we don't have a cert in front of it because I'm a salesperson. I don't believe in certificates. All right. And let's get signed in here. So yeah, you'll see, Argo CDs here, but also, everything's being synchronized that was in that application repository. So, the one you'll probably focus on the most and probably can't read it very well is the socks project here. So we can see our sock shop that's coming up from the version control system. So this has its own overlay. I'm doing some extra things to basically specify this for my environment, like changing the load balancer. But yeah, this is all going to come up and come online. So it's going to restore everything in about 5 minutes for me. Obviously, this depends on how much resources are available to your cluster, how many apps you have to restore. But yeah, just gives you a viable way to restore and connect everything from the version control out to the Kubernetes cluster. So I don't think I'm going to wait for this unless anybody wants to see it, go into a healthy state. You can at least see it's synchronized. Things are coming online. I think we can go down here and kind of see that we are going to have some pods that are still working their way up. But I'm going to go ahead and continue with the slide deck because I want to get to one of the important things, which I consider maybe the most important thing, and that is my call to action. So I noticed, there is some contributors still on staff at Codefresh, still working on this project. But all open source projects, to move them forward, we need additional contributors. So I ask everyone to, if you're interested in kind of moving this forward, maybe seeing Helm support or seeing additional support as far as recovery or other things, please, at the end of this deck, you can go to download the deck online through schedule. I'm going to have additional resources. You can come participate in the CNCF Slack channel. You could help out on GitHub. We have issues there. If you're going to use it and you want to file some issues, feel free to. We're still trying to, help out and be the lead contributors on this. I was supposed to have one of my colleagues join me. His name's Gnome. And Gnome's here today if you want to talk to him a little bit about Argo Autopilot and where kind of the roadmap's taking us. The roadmap's also included as part of the GitHub repository, so some of the things we would like to see and others have mentioned as far as improvements to help us move this project forward, those materials are available there. So, if you want to come see and pick Gnome's brain about it, you can. Also, I'm up to talk about my experience with it. I've been away from it for a few years now, but I was using it on a daily basis. About 4 years ago, I was using it on a daily basis to help everyone install Argo. And I know a lot of folks have moved on past that, and they have their own Argo installation process. Maybe it's being bootstrapped as part of Terraform. But at least for clusters we have to bring up and down and we want to recover, especially from a developer's perspective, this might be a very valuable tool for you. It is for me. So yeah, again, there's the resources. You can pick those up later. Basically, that's the Slack channel. If you want to come participate with me and Gnome, bounce any questions off of us, become a contributor, please reach out.